Esta es una muestra de los documentales técnicos de medio ambiente con los cuales nuestros alumnos perfeccionan su inglés. Neurolingüística, Thinking English.
I'm exploring the fascinating world of plants, from the most bizarre to the most beautiful. I will be using today's latest technology to reveal a whole new dimension in the lives of plants. I'll trace them from their beginnings on land to their vital place in nature today. And discover a hidden world that only too often we overlook. We will move from our timescale to theirs. We will explore the extraordinary ways by which some plants survive in the harshest conditions. And we will do all this in one unique place, a microcosm of the whole plant world. The Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. I've seen plants growing in their natural habitats all over the world, but here in Kew it's possible to examine them in a way that is impossible in the wild. Here some 90% of all known plant species are represented in one form or another. So in this one place you can survey the entire plant kingdom, and what is more, using 3D cameras, reveal some of its most intimate secrets. Plants flourish most dramatically in places where there is a lot of warmth and a lot of water, the wet zone. So here we can discover how plants first establish themselves on land to become the very foundation of all terrestrial life. Rainforests occupy only about 2% of the world's land surface, but they contain over 50% of the world's species. And many of these wet zone plants have extraordinary survival strategies, and to study them, Kew has built a rainforest here on the banks of the Thames. This is a rainforest like no other. The palm house was constructed in 1844 from over 200 tons of iron and 16,000 panes of glass. No one had ever built a glass house on this scale before, and to do so the architects borrowed techniques from the shipbuilding industry, which may explain why the palm house looks like the upturned hull of a ship. Its purpose was to provide a home for the tropical plants that Victorian explorers brought back from their adventures in the tropics. It was an engineering wonder of the age. And it is still a botanical wonder. Conditions in this glass house are near perfect for wet zone plants. It's warm, it's humid, there's plenty of light, and as a consequence, plants grow very rapidly and all through the year. If you speed up time, plants begin to reveal their true nature. They're not passive organisms, as you might think, but competitive creatures every bit as aggressive as animals. They're locked in a desperate battle for light and space. They stretch and pulse as they strive to barge their way into pole position. Creepers and vines reach around for the branch or stem of another plant on which to hitch a ride. Bamboos, a family of giant grasses, are capable of extraordinary speeds as they race towards the brightest light at the top of the canopy. They're the fastest growing of all plants. Some species can grow a whole meter in a single day. And at 30 meters tall, as high as a 9-story office block, they can compete with the tallest rainforest trees. The one resource wet zone plants don't need to fight for is water. In fact, there can be so much rain in the rainforest that some species have to have special ways of getting rid of it. This is the taro plant, and it has the most extraordinary leaves. Watch what happens when I pour water on them. The water rolls, leaving the leaf behind almost dry. And that's because the leaf is covered with very, very tiny microscopic structures which hold aloft the droplets of water. And as a consequence, only about 2% of water touches the actual leaf surface itself. And as the droplets roll away, they carry with them the dirt and bacteria. So in effect, these leaves are self-cleaning. But there are some plants that use water in a different way. And they live high up in the canopy. A tank bromeliad, a plant that is dispensed with the need of growing in the soil on the ground and instead attaches itself to branches up here in the canopy where there's plenty of light. And since it's so far from the ground, it has had to develop a technique of collecting its nutriment in a quite different way. They collect some of the rain that every day drenches the South American rainforest where they live. Their leaves, which are very broad, channel the rainwater into a central reservoir. At their base, the leaves are so tightly pressed together that the tank they create is watertight. Some species can hold up to 50 litres of liquid. The water not only hydrates the plant, but it also provides a home for a lot of creatures that wouldn't otherwise be able to live up here. These little wrigglers are the larvae of mosquitoes. In the wild, there are lots of different creatures that can be found in these little pools. This is Ranitomia imitator, a poison dart frog from Peru. the size of a thumbnail, and the only monogamous amphibian in the world. Some individuals spend their whole lives, from tadpole to adult, in and around bromeliad pools. And high in the canopy, such a pool provides an excellent home. It's relatively safe, and there's a ready supply of food. The plant benefits from the arrangement because the droppings produced by its lodger are a nutritious fertilizer. Bromeliads and the frogs that live in them are only one example of the complex relationships that abound in the rainforests. In tropical forests, the lives of every living thing, both animal and plant, are intimately entwined. It's a tangled web that has evolved over many millions of years. Throughout their history, rainforests have provided plants with a refuge against harsher conditions elsewhere in the planet. So in rainforests, you find some very ancient plant families. This cycad, for example, belongs to a family that certainly provided food for the dinosaurs. But the rainforest is such a rich environment that plants from all stages in their history can still be found here. The first were slimy, thread-like algae that emerged from rivers and swamps to grow on the wet, muddy margins. "40 million years or so later, some developed watertight coverings that enabled them to move onto drier, though still moist, land. They were the liverworts and the mosses. Later still, some of the descendants of those plants stiffened their stems so that they were able to stand upright as they reached up towards the light. They were the ferns and horsetails. This greening of the earth changed the course of life, allowing animals to follow plants out of permanent water. As they spread across the land, the plants pumped out oxygen from their leaves. So from the very beginning, land animals were dependent upon plants, not only for food, but for the very air they breathe. A major difficulty for plants in their new environment was reproduction. If they were to produce fertile seeds, pollen from one had to reach and fertilize the ova, the eggs of another. Conifers, pines, yews and firs then, as now, used wind. They produced vast numbers of pollen grains, scarcely bigger than particles of dust, which the wind could carry for hundreds of miles. The technique was successful, but very wasteful. Immense quantities of pollen grains had to be produced if just one was to reach its target. But then, about 140 million years ago, some developed a much more efficient way of doing that. with flowers.
¿Usted podría dictar una conferencia de un tema que no conoce? Entonces, ¿cómo puede hablar inglés sin entender su lógica? Neurolingüística Thinking English ha diseñado un sistema que simplifica la enseñanza del inglés, haciendo que los estudiantes, antes de hablar, entiendan el funcionamiento del idioma y la cultura anglo. Y lo mejor de todo, en tan solo 6 meses. Deja atrás las tediosas clases, haga parte de este revolucionario sistema mientras aprende cantando, jugando, cocinando y bailando. No pierda oportunidades laborales, académicas o de entretenimiento. Nuestra meta es hacer realidad sus metas.